And this is the Tri-State Audi Knicks postgame show. On a day where the Butler did it despite being less than his best, and the home team brought the heat on a runaway day. The Knicks headed south for Game 3 of their Eastern Conference playoff series, and their game followed suit. Down double digits early and often, and it was a damper for the Knicks. 105-86, they lose Game 3 to the Miami Heat, and they now trail this best-of-7 series 2-1. As we welcome you inside our Delta MSG studios, John Giannone, Monica McNutt, Alan Hahn. The Knicks were down double digits early in the second quarter and never cut it again to single digits in losing 105-86. Of the many things that were troubling about today, what stood out most to you?
I'll go with my key to the game, John, which was three-point shooting on both sides. And neither team shot the ball well. The Knicks certainly abysmal as far as three-point shooting goes. But just overall, from the jump of that ball game, they just looked a step or two behind and never gained the ground. We can point to a plethora of stats. You could even point to some of your key guys not having signature performances. But just in totality, I'm not sure what to chalk that one up to.
Well, I'll go with my key. Hustle plays.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one team played playoff basketball, another team didn't look like they wanted that smoke. You know, that, I mean, it boils down to that. You know,
I agree.
It honestly, it's as simple as the Heat came out ready to play hard, ready to play how they play, which is, as we talked about after Game 2, they're going to fight you. This is going to be a fight, and you have to be willing to fight back. The Knicks had some guys on the floor in that first half that were not interested in fighting back. And that's how you get into a deficit situation, and then they chase the whole game. They've got to have a collective conversation about how much they want to win this series, because that kind of an effort in the first half by a handful of guys on this team, they have to figure out, do they want it bad enough or not? Because Miami's not going away. This is how they're going to play. They're going to play hard. It's an ugly basketball. It's not a pretty game. There's 25 fouls called on Miami, 22 on the Knicks. But yet Miami got more free throw attempts. Why? Because they were going to the basket harder. When Miami fouled you, they hit you hard. When the Knicks were fouling, it was taps. They're going to have to figure out if they're ready to play this game or not.
And this is interesting because we heard on the broadcast on ABC, Tom Thibodeau was mic for sound, and in the first quarter, he said to his team, don't let them outwork us. Get the intensity in this game that you need. And the Knicks never had it. And to your point, it really was when the ball was on the floor. That really exemplified what he was talking about.
John, if you're a coach in a playoff game, Game 3 in the second round, and you have to say that to your team, that's not a coaching issue. That's some player issues there, no doubt about that. Let's just take a look at it. Again, we talk about hustle plays. I said this in the pregame. Things that aren't in the box score. Tap backs. I can't catch it, but I'm not letting you catch it. Who wants it more? Dive on the floor. Make that play. Make the extra play. But dive like you mean it. Offensive rebound, kickouts, looking for people. Look at how you're just seeing the tap back again. I can't get it, but you're not getting it either. Just the extra hustle. Now you see quickly come in, try to hustle. He goes down, but you see him bodies diving on the floor, going after it. More free balls to get to, right? Come on, RJ, get on the floor, RJ. Instead, Kyle Lowry dives. Now, it's still Nick ball because that ball goes out of bounds. The point, though, is made there that they are willing to go on the floor. They are willing to dive and make the play. And the Knicks, for the most part in this game, were not. And the thing about the Knicks this season is they have always been that team. Josh Hart showed up, and they became a team that won a lot of the 50-50 balls. Late in Game 2, they were all about that life. But in this game, for some reason, they were not. And that's why they were embarrassed in this game.
Well, I think shooting, we've seen it come and go over the course of this postseason. I think the hustle stats are a great call out. Obviously, that was literally the difference in the second half of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter in Game 2. But the other thing, just frankly, you got 13 turnovers. You give up 16 points off of those turnovers, and you lose by, I'm bad at math, what is that, 20 even?
But you know what, though?
19?
The points off turnovers was 22 in the first two games, 22 and 22. So 16 actually is as bad as
by comparison to today's performance.
But you knew that's what they were going to do.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So you got to hold on to the basketball, especially on a day where you don't necessarily have the 50-50 energy, right? And so, listen, basketball is such a game of runs, a game of matchups, what each contest provides and calls for. Point blank, period. You have to match the intensity of a desperate Miami Heat team. Now, whether you believe that desperate represents them as a organization or just the sort of mindset and urgency maybe is a better word in terms of what they play with.
Urgency is a great word.
You start there, right? I wish we could burn up these box scores, watch this film, learn what you got to learn, and move on. What will be interesting is now the cadence of this series, because both of these teams are absorbing hits, whether you want to be the one that created the hits or took the hits. The physical nature of this series is going to take a toll on both squads.
And there's only one day off. Now we don't have this whole week. This is a best of 5, everybody. I mean, we had almost a week in between games. Has turned this into a best of 5 series with not a lot of time off now between games. We're going every other Monday, Wednesday, and then hopefully Friday if we can get there. So with that in mind, you got to know that as banged up as Jimmy Butler looks in this game, despite the fact that he played great, we'll get to that, Julius Randle clearly looked like he was limited. Jalen Brunson playing through it as well. Everybody's got issues. Who is going to be the team that can get through it and endure?
All right. Well, we came on the air about 3.5 hours ago here on MSG for the pregame show, talking about how Jimmy Butler was cleared to play in Game 3, and we wondered what he would look like and how effective he would be. What he looked like was somebody who was at times sporting an ankle injury. What he ended up doing production-wise, 28 points, 9 of 21 shooting, 10 of 11 from the free throw line. So assess his day.
Not bad for a bum Will. I mean, you knew that Jimmy, whatever he did, it was going to be the type of performance that could shift the ball game. And tonight, he got the backing of his teammates. You got 3 other guys, in comfortable double figures, role players that go off. He was patient. He was a little bit mindful. I think early in the game on that play, we wondered if he was going to just land on one foot and be mindful. But he was still able to be very effective, and that's the part that's sort of scary as he continues to hopefully,
Smart.
Just as a basketball player, you want to see him get healthy, but I don't know if the Knicks want to see him any more healthier than he was.
I mean, he got to the free throw line. Remember, we were talking about him in the pregame, and I said, what does he do? He's going to draw fouls. He does it the most of anybody in the playoffs. Gets to the free throw line. He does it the most of anybody in the playoffs. He got 11 free throw attempts. Now, here's where things got scary for him, is he had a hard fall. And you could see that hurt enough to need help to get up. And the rest of the game, he had that little hitch, right, in the step, a little limp that he had going. They didn't want to put him back in the game, but he hit one more shot. It was a 14-point game. It was a sense of, all right, if Jimmy can't come back in the game, maybe you can get something going on here. He made a tough, contested shot, turned to some Knicks fans in the crowd and said, no, go home. He let them know, that's it. So he wasn't going to let anything happen there. But with one day off in between, as I said, how fast can he recover for a big Game 4? But you have to, again, just be impressed with a guy who can have the resiliency of playing through clearly pain, landing on one foot throughout the entire game. We kept noticing that. Would not land on the bad foot. So it was definitely bothering him, but he still produced, as he always does.
He did, and that shot that he made there when it was 14-point deficit for the Knicks came as the shot clock expired, which made it even more impactful. Adding injury to the insult on this day for the Knicks was that Emmanuel quickly, late in the game, left the game after he collided, went down. It looked like it was either an ankle or some kind of leg injury here, Alan.
Yeah, that's a tough fall. It could be a high. I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I've been through many injuries, and that's one that, that looks like, that's a tough one. The way that tweaks, the body weight that hits it, you saw him limping off the court, going into the locker room. There you see it right there. And again, with one day in between, he's so important to this team. We know he was a 6th Man of the Year finalist, so his bench production, and he was giving the Knicks some in this game. So more concerns now about his availability, obviously, for Game 4.
Look, this is going to be a tall task, right? Like, it was going to be a challenging series, even if nobody sustained and not a single injury, bruise, tough screen, none of that, right? And so I'm sure that we don't have to tell Tom Thibodeau and company that it's not a time to start making excuses, right? Like, these are real things that have to be sustained. Both teams are kind of hobbled at this point in the series, but you got to play smart basketball, right? And tonight, the three-point shooting, point-blank period, has to be better, right? And then I think it snowballed because when things didn't go well in the second half, by the third, almost everybody's trying to be a hero in their own moment. And so you're not taking really good quality shots, right? He didn't play as much zone, per se, to me in this ball game, but partly because it didn't quite demand that in terms of slowing an offense that had already stalled for the Knicks. This thing is going to come down to a mental fortitude test, like moving forward from this ball game. You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly what it is.
Collective look in the mirror.
Yeah, let's go.
It really is, because Game 1 was the same thing. Game 1 was sort of like they outworked you, they outfoxed you in Game 1. In Game 2, you figured it out late enough to outwork them and make all the plays, the hustle plays you needed to make. And game 3 was simply playing harder and smarter. One team did, and that's Miami. They have more veterans. They have guys that have been there. They've been a team that's gotten to an NBA Finals. The core has gotten to the conference finals last year. They have the experience and the understanding of what it takes to win in the playoffs. The Knicks won in the Cavs series and thought, okay, that's how it's supposed to be. This is a whole other level of physicality.
Completely different.
They're going to have to understand you got to play this way to beat this team.
Knicks starters scored 99 points in the Game 2 win. They had 38 fewer points, only 61 in game number 3.